they're getting the recording anyway. So the aim of this session is basically moving past the eat more fruit and veg and lean protein of fat loss, because there is so much more to it than that. But that's the thing that you'll get in every personal trainer's ebook. No offense to any personal trainers that are in here. Hi, Richie. It probably says this in your ebook. And I wanted to move beyond that into some physiologically beneficial advice that you can implement straight away that will probably benefit you. So without further ado, let's crack on. So overarching principles of fat loss, I'm just going to skim over. I'm going to teach you how to suck some eggs. You need a calorie deficit. Energy balance trumps everything. So you have to be in a calorie deficit to lose body fat. It's non-negotiable. Energy balance trumps everything. So if you are in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight regardless of all the other shit that's going on around it. If you are not in a calorie deficit, you will not lose weight. That's just how it works. Even insulin, it even trumps insulin and carbohydrates and hormones and all that stuff. Insulin and things like that can change whether you are in a deficit or not, but if you are not losing fat, it is because you are not in a deficit, not because insulin or not because carbs. Eat less, move more is the general principles of fat loss. For some people, that little bit of advice is enough. And I'm kind of assuming that because you're here today, that piece of advice is either not enough for you or it's not enough for your clients. But for some people going, just eat a bit less and move a bit more, they're like, oh, and it clicks into place. But for a lot of people, it's not quite that easy because of the way modern life is set up, the way family life is set up, the way everything is set up, and how we're doing it. So the generic advice, every personal trainer's ebook will tell you the following things. Eat more fruit and vegetables, eat more lean protein, less snacking on energy-dense, highly palatable foods. But I think a lot of the people who are telling you this don't actually know why they're telling you this. And this is the like boring snoring. We've heard it all before. Charlotte, I'm bored of this. Why are you telling me? Because this is actually helpful advice. This is stuff that will all contribute towards fat loss. Fewer meals out. Generally, people, like I've been a chef. I've worked in a kitchen. We don't give a shit about your diet. We want that risotto to taste really nice. So we are going to put half a block of butter in it and some double cream as well. We don't really care about your dietary preferences and your dietary needs, unless it's an allergy or a legit intolerance. And if you put like low fat or something on the menu, the chef doesn't care. He's still going to cook it in oil. Everything is made to taste nice with there are like 3 rules in chefing. It's like if it doesn't taste good, add some butter or some oil, add some lemon or lime juice, and add some salt. And those are the 3 things that will basically make all of your cooking taste better. You're welcome. So fewer meals out because you end up consuming high calorie foods. Like if you've ever seen, I can't remember where it is in the States, but there's like, maybe it's the Cheesecake Factory or something. And if you've ever looked at their menu and the calories that are on their menu, it's insane. Or like Applebee's or something like that. The calories on there are so high. And I did some nutritional analysis for the old restaurant that I worked in. And we were like, we're not putting the calories on the menu because no one will eat here. Reduce big episodes of overeating. Very helpful advice. Fewer takeaways, same as the eating out thing. It is very easy to accidentally smash through 2,000 calories worth of Domino's pizza by accident. But it's not quite as easy to smash through 2,000 calories of like either homemade pizza or chicken and vegetables and whatever else you're going to eat. Less alcohol. Alcohol lowers inhibitions and then makes you more likely to get a kebab on the way home, as well as contributing to calorie intake. And then the like try harder bro chicken and rice in it diet. So that is the general fat loss advice that you will get from most people. And it's correct. Every single thing in there will help you to lose weight, but it's not very inspiring. It's kind of boring. You're probably bored of hearing it all. And you're like, Charlotte, please don't make this the entire presentation. I promise there's more to it than this. And then you'll get the IIFYM personal trainers. IIFYM stands for if it fits your macros. So these are the people that will give you calories and macros. Just count calories and macros, bro, and you'll be fine. And these kind of people tend to be massive, jacked up dudes, mostly on steroids. So like they can pretty much eat what they want, eat a massive, or they have their clients eating a massive pizza because like cheat meal, bro, boost your metabolism. Doesn't actually work like that. And exist on poverty calories for the rest of the week. So it's very much like you have this allocated number of calories for the week. And if you can make your life fit within those calories, you can eat whatever you want. And it's true, it does work like that, but it doesn't set you up well for life, for happiness, it's not conducive to social occasions, it's not conducive to like family life. A lot of people just really hate tracking, me included. spend all your free time in the gym, do 1,000,000 steps a day, bodybuilding's life. You should probably compete if you like want to be really serious about going to the gym and stuff like that. And if in doubt, just do some drugs, like just do some steroids, do some clen, whatever else it is that people are doing. I wonder if I can make my background not fuzzy because I don't like having fuzzy hands. It feels weird. Let me just see if I can do it. No, I do not know. Cool. Yeah, just take some drugs. Or on the opposite end of the spectrum to like the roided up bodybuildery coach, we all know them. We've all seen them posing in their sparkly trunks on Instagram and like with their arse cheeks out and with their clients with their like pictures with their arse out. You get the love yourself coach. And these love yourself coaches are very anti-diet, love yourself enough to eat the donut, never ever restrict anything. And this is the kind of advice that you might hear from these kind of people. Eat whatever you want, meditate your way to happiness. Probably used to have an eating disorder like most of these love yourself coaches do. They are generally people that have recovered from some form of disordered eating and had to learn how to love themselves in the process. And their appetite and actually eating a suitable quantity of food so that they weren't super lean or super skinny or had an eating disorder or a subclinical eating disorder or whatever it was, the way that they got there was by actually realizing that they could let go of the reins a little bit, love themselves a little bit and eat a bit more food. But their appetite has landed them in probably quite a socially acceptable body and it's fine. Or they just can't be asked anymore. And I noticed this with a lot of people that used to be like competitors. If you had like a favorite few bikini competitors from like 4 to 5 years ago, go and find them now and see what they're doing, like see what they look like, see if those things that they used to preach they're still doing, and I can guarantee that 98% of them so they probably have an appetite and learn behaviors that keep them in a socially acceptable body. Or if they are in a higher body weight, they're probably at the point where they're like, you know what, I can't be asked to diet anymore, so let's just not. And then there's me. I'm the take responsibility for yourself and be open to all possibilities type coach, like somewhere in the middle, boring as fuck. Incorporate a bit of everything, do what you like and what makes you happy. And for me, it's all about curating this lifestyle that dictates your body weight, and you just let your body weight be a reflection of your lifestyle instead of trying to force it to do unnatural things. If you also work on liking yourself a little bit more, you'll probably have an easier time with fat loss. This is kind of basically what I do with my clients. And it's all about enjoying your food, enjoying your life, having a good time, taking responsibility for yourself, working hard. And look at everything, not just food. Some people I got a question today in my DMs, which was like, so what do you think a nutritionist should do that's not just calories and macros? And I was like, everything, literally everything. So the fat loss hacks. These fat loss hacks that I'm going to walk you through won't induce weight loss if you're not in a calorie deficit. I want to caveat everything that I'm about to say with this statement. If you are not in a deficit, then you are not going to lose body fat. But they might be the thing that makes it easier for you to stick to a deficit. And you might have a couple of little aha moments. And I find that knowledge of knowledge is very powerful. So understanding what you're doing and more importantly, why you're doing it is really powerful. So I found this with, to be completely honest about it, my mental health. The more that I've understood the mechanisms at play and the more that I've understood why I react in certain ways, what has happened that makes me react in these ways, like all those kind of things, the way the neural circuitry works, I can start to rationalize. I can start to go, oh, and you can start to fix things and move on. And you start to kind of realize that, well, it's not your fault, it's your responsibility to manage it. So these little things as kind of like physiology hacks, and it hacks into circuitry that we already have embedded in our systems that you can take advantage of. Sorry, I also have tonsillitis, so I'm starting to get a little bit croaky. And we are embracing neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change and mold and evolve. People think that the neural circuits that we have, so the circuits that we have in our brain are hardwired. They're not hardwired, they're actually quite soft-wired, which means that we can rewire things to work in our advantage. So some people think they're just like, oh, I'm just destined to be overweight, I'm destined to always want donuts, I'm destined to this, that, and the other. And the circuitry that you have at the moment is brought on by the actions that you've taken, by the things that you've reinforced. So the circuitry that you have is somewhat your fault, somewhat the fault of the environment, somewhat the fault of like maternal programming. So when you were in the womb, what your mum ate, like all that kind of stuff goes into our neural circuitry that helps us to decide what we eat and how we eat and helps to dictate that. So we can actually change it, and that is called neuroplasticity. If anyone's on my email list, fun fact, taking cocaine reduces neuroplasticity. So taking cocaine actually reduces your ability of your brain circuits to change. Don't do cocaine. So we can basically retrain your brain to make fat loss feel easier. And looking at your body weight as a product of your lifestyle, I'm very big on this. This basically means living your flipping life and letting your body weight fall where it's going to fall in line with that life. And this for me has been a game changer with myself, with my clients. Like personally, I now maintain as lean, not as lean, but like a similar body weight as to when I was competing, which is insane. So here's the teaching you to suck eggs bit. Calorie deficit means eating fewer calories than you burn. Putting this bit in for anyone who maybe is new to fat loss, who hasn't, this is their first foray into actually trying to lose weight. So a calorie deficit is eating fewer calories than you burn. So for example, if you burn 2,000 calories over the day, including like your metabolism and like your basal metabolic metabolism and basal metabolic rate even, apparently you do this when you present. You just say words that don't make sense and you don't realize that you said that. Like I just said basal metabolic metabolism. I caught myself, but a lot of the time when people are presenting, they do that and they don't realize that they've said something that just doesn't make sense and it just washes over your head because you're in the zone. And so if you burn 2,000 calories as a product of like your BMR, your exercise, how much you move, steps, thermogenic effect of food, all that good stuff, and then you eat 1,500 calories worth of food, like 1,500 calories of food goes in your mouth and gets swallowed, you were in a 500 calorie deficit. So you're in a calorie deficit there. And the deficit is this bit, is the difference between these two numbers. A lot of people will go, oh, my calorie deficit is 1,500 calories. Your calorie deficit isn't 1,500 calories. Your calorie deficit is 500 calories because it's the difference between what you burn and what you eat. And same if it's the other way around, your surplus would be, like say if you burnt 1,500 calories and ate 2,000, your surplus would be 500 calories. So there are two moving parts in a deficit. Eat less food, move more, because you have this energy expenditure component and you have this energy intake component, and both of those are dynamic. So both of those move around every single day. And that's why when you track your calories, you can only ever have a good guess at what your calorie needs actually are, because especially this can be fairly dynamic during the day based on how much you move around. So I have clients that I don't know if anyone else who is a coach here has clients who will some days do like 2,000 steps and some days do like 20,000 steps. And the energy that you're going to burn on those days is vastly different. But as long as we kind of average out and be like, okay, so that's going through about 11,000 steps a day, probably about this much, puts them in the moderately active bracket or whatever, then we can work out an average energy requirement. So dynamic components is intake, expenditure. You have the power to change both of those things. You have more power to change the intake than you do the expenditure. There is some, I suppose, constraints on this as to how much you can actually burn in a day. And you can probably get a good idea. So if anyone has like a fitness watch, you can, or you won't be able to see it, you can get a good idea of like your daily energy burn. And this is a good estimate. It's not super accurate, but you'll see a bit of a trend over time. Like I noticed that if I really don't do much throughout the day, it comes up at like 2,200 calories at the end of the day. If I hit 10,000 steps a day, it probably comes up at more in like the 2,400 range. So why do people struggle with the calorie deficit? Because that's really simple, right? Like that is super simple. You just don't eat much and you move a bit more. And there are several factors which make it difficult. Firstly is lifestyle factors. We have this modern obesogenic environment. Obesity is on the rise, and it's not really due to anything we're actively doing differently. A lot of it is very top down. And when I say top down, I mean a lot of it is very governed by what society looks like as a whole, not what we're choosing to do. So we have this modern obesogenic environment where you can order a pizza to your house. You don't even have to get up to use the phone. You probably have your laptop or your tablet or your phone next to you, and you just go on an app. You don't even have to talk to a human being. You go on an app, you press a few buttons, and you've got pizza. So modern obesogenic environment, lots of access to highly palatable foods. So technology is improving, which means that food technology is improving, which means we can make things that taste really fucking good, and less physically active. We have desk jobs, we have cars. It's not like we're laboring in the fields all day and having to walk or cycle to work. Like you can drive to work, sit at your desk all day, drive home and eat a pizza that someone else delivered to you. You don't even have to cook. You don't have to go to the supermarkets to shop. And a lot of people struggle to get their steps in for this reason, because everything is so set up so that you don't have to move. People even have like smart switches, so you don't have to turn the lights on. You tell Alexa to do it. High food availability. Food availability has never been higher than it is now, apart from when you need an aubergine in Tesco's and they don't have any aubergines because Brexit. But food availability is at an all-time high. And shit food, and when I say shit food, I mean highly processed, highly palatable, not that high in nutritional value. I'm thinking like, those potato waffles that you put in the toaster, or like potato smileys or whatever. That kind of food, frozen sausage rolls is generally a lot cheaper. So if you have people who are on a more constrained budget, that's probably what people are going to reach for, which is why there is a lot of obesity in lower socioeconomic environments as well as the high socioeconomic environments. And more disposable income. So we have more income to spend on doing fun things, eating out, and going to the cinema and having a big thing of pick and mix or popcorn. Like I bet you remember going to the cinema with your parents and then being like, oh no, popcorn's far too expensive, you can't have popcorn as well. And now we have more disposable income. Popcorn's probably not even a second thought for most people. And brains and bodies that are not evolved to deal with all of that. So brains and bodies that we haven't caught up with this yet. Our brains haven't quite evolved to the point where this isn't problematic for us. We are still somewhat wired and evolved to deal with hunting and catching and gathering and living in tribes and wearing loincloths and all that good stuff and farming the fields and having potato famines. Like, we're still evolved to deal with that. There is still an element of survival in our brains and bodies. Which makes it really difficult to exist within this environment and not get fat unless you have a lot of behaviors and habits that have been ingrained from a young age. Like you grew up in quite an austere family, or you grew up eating smaller portion sizes or whatever. And then you have like the person specific factors. I tried to think of better words to describe these, but I couldn't come up with any better. So you've got lifestyle and person factors. It's hard. Humans weren't really designed to restrict food intake by choice. Like, it's not really something that we've ever had to think about, apart from in the last 50 years maybe, and we haven't evolved that far yet. So we were never designed to restrict food intake by choice. Whenever we had restricted food intake, it was because of a famine, it was because of something had gone wrong, it was because of natural disaster. And the people that survived that were the people that could hunt and gather, that probably had higher body fat reserves, so that it would take you longer to starve to death. And people that had slightly thriftier genetics. So what would generally happen is you'd follow this seasonal wave of getting slightly fatter in the summer, so your body weight increasing in the summer when food is plentiful, that's abundant, and then harvest time, lots of feasting, probably body weight's at an all-time high, and then it dips down again over winter as food becomes a little bit scarcer. This is when we grew our own food, produced all our own food, and didn't have the international transport links that we do now, which means, oh no, it's bedtime, 8:30. Sorry about that. When we didn't have these huge international transport links, which meant I could have avocado on toast all year round. Lack of consistency. You don't practice the skills enough until they're effortless, because it's hard. And I think that's one of the truths of it is if you want to become good at something, you have to practice it. And very few people will actually practice enough to be able to be good at those skills, to be able to be good at the skills of fat loss. Lack of knowledge. So generally just not understanding nutrition. Lack of habits to support lower body weight. So once you get to that body weight, like what did you do to get there? How do you maintain that? And a lot of people don't know what to do, and they don't want to survive on chicken and rice for the rest of their life, and they just go back up to what they were doing before. Poor mental health. I think society and the modern environment doesn't really help with this. A lot of people turn to food for comfort. They turn to food for support, and because society is really hard to live in. Poor relationships with food from really shit diets. And this isn't really our fault. I think this is more of a diet culture type fault, but restriction that then leads to binging, and then the diet like fails, and it doesn't fail. Like you lose a shitload of weight really quickly. Lots of restriction, lots of like shitty celery juice diets, like eat this or that, or Cambridge diets, or whatever it is that whatever the new trend is. And you see it all over. Like if you want to see some terrible dietary advice, go to TikTok and you'll see girls doing ridiculous things like the lemon and cayenne and maple syrup water or whatever it is that like Beyonce did once or something. And you have these highly restricted diets, which then leads to binging. And binging back when we mostly existed on wheat and potatoes and a bit of meat when we slaughtered a cow, and some like maybe some milk and some eggs. Binging when we existed on those kinds of foods wasn't really a problem because you probably lost a load of weight over winter when food wasn't particularly plentiful, and then binged your way back up to like a normal body weight, and then that cycle just repeated itself seasonally, and it wasn't a problem. It was actually very helpful for us. But now, because of those mechanisms that are at play, we have access to all of this food, and we still have those mechanisms that are like, right, you restricted, you need to put all the weight back on again, off you go, because you'll just lose it again next winter. We won't lose it again next winter because there's still pizza next winter. And then your diet fails, and then you feel like a failure. And lack of physiological mechanisms to support dieting. As I just kind of described there, we have mechanisms that are there to stop us from losing weight. Our body is trying to stop us from losing weight. We are very good at defending our higher body weight. So theoretically, we have mechanisms which are meant to keep us kind of within this range, to keep us, I suppose, fluctuating around maintenance. We are not very good at defending this lower set point. We are very good at defending this highest body weight. So if your highest body weight increases, it's like, oh, we'll just move everything up a little bit. Cool. And it gets really good at defending up here. So if you start losing weight, we have all these mechanisms that push you to gain it back. So your appetite will increase, your food focus will increase, those kind of things. So the first fat loss hack is omega-3. And this probably sounds like a bizarre one, but bear with me. So this is manipulating the gut-brain axis to work in your favor. And this is a well-established thing that we know about. Our neuroendocrine systems help control our appetite. So neurons, hormones, all that kind of talking to each other, way too complicated to ever try and explain. Even I don't fully get how it works. Like endocrinologists are wizards. But neurons in the gut sense the presence of nutrients. And one of the nutrients that they sense the most, so we have these neurons are like sticks. I'm going to describe them as like sticks with like tentacles on the end. And these tentacles protrude into your small intestine. So your what am I trying to find the word for? Yeah, they protrude into your small intestine through the walls of it, and they go, oh, I can feel that there's omega-3 in here, or they sense that there's nutrients in here, and these nutrients like touch these neurons, it sends messages back up from your gut to your brain. Like the gut-brain axis is a real thing. Sends your message from your gut to your brain to go, there's omega-3 there, we can stop eating. So specifically, omega-3 fatty acids are one of the nutrients that these neurons are looking for within the gut. So diets that are sufficient in omega-3 tell the brain to release chemicals that tells we can stop eating. And the specific chemical that it releases is cholecystokinin, which is shortened to CCK. And that is an appetite hormone, which tells us when we are full. So we eat some salmon, omega-3 goes up, and our brain goes, oh, our gut goes, oh, we've got omega-3 in here. This is nice. This is some good salmon. Nom, 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 nom. And when we hit sufficient levels of omega-3, our neurons are like, oh, we've had enough, we're full. Okay, send messages to the brain. Cool, don't need to keep eating. Tell her to stop eating now. And then me will be like, but pudding. And it's like, okay, but pudding stomach. But it tells us that we're full. Hormones are amazing. So eat more omega-3 rich foods or supplement with it daily. I meant to put in the quantities people always ask me. So in terms of quantities, you want to be aiming for probably at least a gram of omega-3 per day. And as I said, this isn't like a life changer. Well, it might be a life changer, but it isn't a complete game changer. You don't need to be supplementing omega-3 with every single meal. You don't need to be supplementing it all the time, just once per day. And I would aim to get at least a gram, preferably closer to 2 grams of EPA and DHA. So when you get your omega-3 supplement, you'll probably see that on the side of the bottle, it might say contains 440 milligrams of EPA and 600 milligrams of DHA. That is the bit that you need to add together. So that will give you 1,400 milligrams of EPA and DHA combined. And that's what you want to be looking for, because EPA and DHA are the essential fatty acids that we need. So aiming for probably 1 to 2 grams per day. If you don't eat oily fish, supplement with it. If you're vegetarian or vegan, you can get vegetarian and vegan alternatives. So start supplementing with omega-3, and it might just help to curb your appetite some more. The second one is sunlight. No, I haven't actually cracked, like I promise. Specifically, bright light in your eyes early in the day. And this is actually quite an amazing mechanism. We have these things called POMC neurons that make this thing called MSH. And MSH is melanocyte stimulating hormone. And it's released from the medial pituitary, which is a bit in your brain. Don't need to know what POMC stands for. I can't remember. It's a really long word. But you have these neurons that make this thing called melanocyte stimulating hormone. And you've probably picked up on the word or like melanocyte in there, and like you're thinking melanin, melatonin, and it's very similar. It comes from the same stuff. I don't fully understand how it all works. You don't need to know this, just makes me sound really smart. So MSH is activated by ultraviolet light to the eyes, and specifically to the eyes. So you get bright light in your eyes and it goes, oh, cool, we'll release some melanocyte stimulating hormone. And this helps to reduce your appetite. This has an appetite suppressant effect. So if you get some bright light in your eyes early in the day, it can actually help you to regulate your appetite over the day. And interestingly, we generally have a higher appetite in the winter months, and this is partly because of reduced exposure to UV light. If you can't get UV light from the sun, you can use like UV lights. Obviously, you don't want to be staring into something until it burns your retinas. Like, don't stare into the sunlight until it hurts. But if you go for a walk in the morning, a morning walk is a great way to take advantage of this. Don't wear your sunglasses, and don't wear anything that's going to like filter out the UV. So you can kind of get some effect if you're driving, so like if you're commuting to work, but ideally you want to be outside. You want to get like 10 to 20 minutes if you can. Like 20 minutes plus would be ideal, but if you can get 10 minutes, that's better than nothing. And so yeah, bright light, sunlight can help to reduce your appetite and help to keep appetite in check. Who knew? Reducing highly processed foods. This is number 3. And I know this came up in the Every Shit Personal Trainer's ebook, but a lot of people don't know this fun fact about highly processed foods and why it might be doing more long-term damage than, or more medium-term damage than we think, and why it might be more detrimental than just what's on the surface. So a lot of people will go, oh yeah, highly processed foods, they're really highly palatable, they're really tasty, they're really high in calories, really energy dense, easy to overeat on. And then would satellites work? Sorry, just looking at this comment. I would assume so if they're UV. Yes, I would assume so. If they're UV, they should work. So if you, for example, work in an office, especially in winter, if you work in an office and you know that you're going to get up in the dark, go to work in the dark, spend all day in work, maybe you get like 15 minutes outside at lunchtime, and then you come home and it's dark like it is now, it might be worth having some satellites in your office, and it might help. Okay, so highly processed foods. Good question. Yes, they are highly palatable. Yes, they're high in calories. Yes, they're easy to overeat. Yes, they can push you out of a calorie deficit because you really, really want to eat all the chocolate, blah, blah, blah. But there are also long-term implications on appetite and food intake. It's not just that immediate short-term, this croissant is delicious and I want to eat all of it. I had a croissant earlier, it was so good. So they generally contain a lot of emulsifiers, and this is a little known thing. So emulsifiers are generally found in foods where we want to extend the shelf life or improve the texture, improve the flavor. And generally you look for things like soy lecithin is one, guar gum, carrageenan, those kind of things. And emulsifiers work by emulsifying, I know, shocker, and they work by emulsifying oil and water. And emulsifying basically means like smushing together and keeping them smushed together. So ice cream, pastries, cakes, like anything shop bought that has a suspiciously, I can't say it, that has a suspiciously long shelf life, and you're like, that cake should be moldy by now, probably contains emulsifiers. So emulsifiers strip the mucosal membrane of the small intestine. But why does that matter? So in the small intestine, imagine this is your small intestine, like in this bit, you have like a lining that's basically made of like snot, and not actual snot, but like it's like a mucousy, snotty substance. And emulsifiers strip that away, something to do with the emulsifying properties and like the oil water mixy thing. And so that matters because remember those neurons that are inside the small intestine that are detecting the presence of nutrients, as well as detecting the presence of omega-3 fatty acids, they're also detecting other essential fatty acids, some amino acids, and sugars. So they're in the small intestine, protruding through this mucosal membrane and going, we've got some sugar in here. This is really nice. Let's tell the brain that we're done. Let's tell them that we're finished eating. So when these neurons are triggered by sufficient quantities of the nutrients, they send a message to our brain to let it know that we can stop eating. As I mentioned, same mechanism as with the omega-3 fatty acids. So it sends a message and goes, cool, we're done, we can stop eating now. And then hunger gets shut down and you stop eating because you're like, okay, cool, finished, full. Emulsifiers strip this mucosal lining of the small intestine, and because it's where these neurons, these little tentacles, are protruding from, they retract and they pull back. So they like retract into the walls of the small intestine, which mean that they're not protruding out as much anymore, so they're not as sensitive. So they retract deeper into the gut, and then we lose sensitivity for the presence of these nutrients. So because we're like, we can't feel them, it's like, I don't know if you've ever burnt the ends of your fingertips by doing something stupid like picking up something hot, and they go a little bit like plasticky almost, and a little bit like that you can't really feel stuff when you're touching it. Imagine that, like, and you're not really sensitive, like you sort of know you're touching it but you're not really sure what it feels like, that kind of thing. If no one's ever put their hand on a grill, I envy you. I've put my hands on many grills back to them. So you lose sensitivity. So you're ingesting this food, you're eating this food, it's going down through your digestive tract to your small intestine, and you're ingesting the food that should trigger these signals, but the signals are never getting triggered. So you're not shutting down this food intake because these neurons aren't as sensitive and aren't sensing the presence of the nutrients. And this makes you want to keep eating because it's like, oh, well, we have to keep going because we haven't got these signals yet. And this isn't really a conscious choice. And unless you override that with conscious choice of, I'm going to stop before I feel full, if you're relying on feeling fullness, and if you're relying on kind of like hunger cues to know when you should stop eating, this can mess with your hunger and fullness cues. Incidentally, emulsifiers can also like fuck with your microbiota a little bit, and something that I'm not 100% sure on how or why it works, but it messes with your gut microbiome a little bit and changes some of the gut bacteria that's down there as well. So eating a lot of highly processed foods can mess with your gut bacteria, which also changes the way we perceive what's down there in terms of nutrients and nutrition. So this makes you want to keep eating. So you don't actually know that it's time to stop. So it limits the gut's ability to detect nutrients in food and then deploy the appropriate signaling mechanisms. So it's literally like physiology kind of just isn't working. These mechanisms that are meant to be there to tell us and to help us regulate our food intake just aren't working. And then what? You've got some structural damage, like this literal stripping of the mucosal membrane is structural damage, and it takes time. This is reversible, but it does take a little bit of time. So you're eating some whole foods and you still can't detect the nutrients. So let's say you have, I don't know why the first thing that comes to mind when I think of like highly processed foods is those little chocolate chip brioches that you get in, are they called like pitch brioches or whatever, in like individually wrapped, little brioche cakey things. You've eaten those consistently. You've eaten a lot of other highly processed foods. Your diet's mostly consisted of highly processed foods. And then you go back to eating whole foods because a well-meaning nutritionist has told you to do that. And immediately you're not getting these benefits that they tell you that you should get. Like you should be like feeling fuller, you should be whatever, you should be getting more nutrition, because you still can't detect the presence of the nutrients. And there's a lot more to appetite than just this one mechanism, but this is a pretty important one. So when you're eating these whole foods, you've gone back to a whole food diet, you still are not getting these signals that tell you to stop because you've got some structural damage. It is reversible, it takes a bit of time. We don't know specifically how much time before someone asks me that, but probably if I were you, I think it would be really interesting to take, especially if you're someone whose diet mostly consists of very highly processed food, is to just take a few weeks of eating home cooked meals, of not purchasing like convenience, cakes, pastries, ice cream. If you're going to do it, like make your own. If it stays fresh for a suspiciously long time in your cupboard, it probably has emulsifiers in it because they prolong shelf life, improve the flavour, and improve the texture. So if you're going to eat sweet foods, I would consider homemade versions. And I think this would probably be a much safer bet than eating, like, I'm going to use croissants here as an example because I think this is a good example. You know how sometimes if you go to a bakery and get a croissant, like an actual proper bakery, and you get a croissant, it probably is stale the next day if you don't eat it while it's fresh. That probably contains less like emulsifying, stabilizing agents than like a supermarket squidgy croissant that sits on the shelf for 5 days in a packet and doesn't go moldy or stale in that time. I would opt for the like bakery homemade croissant every single time. Make your own, start making your own food, start making your own dessert. Have a crack at making your own bread. It's super easy. And that way you know what's in it, you know there's no emulsifiers, you know there's no nasties in there. And that's my 3 tips. And I have a few more quick fire tips for you that I just wanted to, I suppose, put out there. And these are more like mindset-y things. So the people who are most successful are the people who have failed the most. Stop being afraid to fail. I was thinking about this earlier on. And people asked me when I did the 100-kilometer ultra marathon, they were like, oh, like you just seem to be able to do everything. Like, how do you just seem to be able to do everything? And I was like, because I had a lot of really shit runs in the prep for it. Like I had a lot of times when I came back and just cried because I hated it. And so don't be afraid for stuff to go wrong, and don't see it as a failure. It's a learning opportunity. You either get to win or you get to learn, and either way you have knowledge that then helps you to make better decisions next time. So do something, try it, have a crack at it. If it goes wrong, then great, you've learned what doesn't work, so you can just try something else. But don't see failures as like, oh, well, I have to stop there because I'm rubbish. It's a sign just to try something different. But don't keep whacking your head against the same brick wall over and over again, hoping that the same things will help. And the most successful people have had a lot of failures in the run to being successful. Get some sleep. Sleep is massively underrated for fat loss. If you're like, oh, but I don't sleep very well, then there's a load of sleep hygiene tips in the fat loss handbook. I'm just going to throw that out there. Try supplementing with L-glutamine. It should help to reduce your sugar cravings. This is another one that not that many people know. L-glutamine is a Very interesting supplement. And if you take it daily, and if you take it like with a meal, it can help to reduce sugar cravings. So if you're one of those people that really, really crave sweet food, try taking a bit of L-glutamine and see what happens. And don't be so focused on the outcome that you miss the process. The process is the fulfilling bit. The process is the good bit. You don't want to get to the outcome and realize that it hasn't made you happy because you haven't engaged in the process. So linking this back to fat loss, losing fat will not make you happy. If you woke up tomorrow, if you could click your fingers and wake up tomorrow at your like dream body weight, I give it like a few days before you realize that you're actually not happy. What you need to focus on is the process of getting there, the process of becoming happy, the process of doing things that you enjoy, the process of having fun and letting your body weight trickle down with that, and the process of becoming a happier person, falling in love with the process, enjoying the process, reveling in the hard work, and then you really get to enjoy the outcome at the end of it. And manage your own expectations. So many people have unrealistic expectations, and unrealistic expectations are unhelpful because you will go into this going, I want to lose 50 kilos within the next 10 weeks. And that's an unrealistic expectation. And not having expectations about outcomes, but having expectations about processes is very helpful. If you can have expectations around things that you have control over and have realistic expectations, going, okay, my expectations of myself are that I am going to go to the gym 3 times a week, like pretty much every week, barring like illness or injury or whatever, or like a death in the family or whatever other things might get in the way of going to the gym or going for a walk. I'm going to walk how many ever steps a day, and I'm going to make sure there's vegetables in all my meals. I'm going to take my omega-3 every day, and I'm going to get a morning walk in every day. Those are things that are completely in your control and completely doable. And unrealistic expectations are unhelpful. You will go, oh, I'm going to lose 50 kilos, and then you will lose 10, and you'll be like, oh, I'm such a failure, even though you've just lost 10 kilos. So manage your own expectations, or get a coach to manage them for you. And we're really good at it. There's a lot of value and reward in hard work. Learn to find it rewarding. And one of the ways that you can learn to find hard work rewarding is by not rewarding yourself for hard work. And what I mean by that is not going swimming and then getting something out of the vending machine afterwards, because what you're doing is you're delaying the reward until after the activity is finished. Whereas if you go swimming, so you swimming, and your brain's like, oh, this is really rewarding because it's hard, but we like it and it's good. And then you go to the vending machine and get your bag of Maltesers afterwards, and that's where the dopamine hit really hits. Your brain associates the dopamine hit with the Maltesers instead of with the swimming. Whereas if you were like swimming, and then just went home, you would still get this dopamine endorphin hit, but it would be like, oh yeah, I feel great because I went swimming, instead of like, oh yeah, I feel great because I have Maltesers. Don't reward yourself. Don't use dopamine stimulating things. Don't always train with music. Don't always reward yourself with cake and coffee after you've been for a run. Like, learn to find the value in the hard work. This is why sometimes I run without my headphones. Like my headphones and my watch stay at home, and I enjoy my runs so much more when they do. And just take action. It doesn't matter if the action's perfect or not. Just do something. If you're not sure what to do, just pick something and do it. And it might not be entirely the right thing, but at least you've made a decision. In general, with fat loss, like, the most obvious thing is probably the right thing. So don't feel like the thing that you're doing, like, don't second guess it too hard. If the option for fat loss is like something with more vegetables or something with less vegetables, probably go with something with more vegetables. A few more quickfire tips. The scales don't represent fat loss, they represent everything. A lot of people get really upset when maybe they daily weigh themselves, and I quite like daily weighing. If you're going to weigh yourself, do it daily. Don't do it like every other day, because you'll miss those in between data points. So the scales don't represent fat loss, they represent everything that's going on. And people get disheartened when they don't see the scales going down, despite ticking all those boxes that they've been trying to tick. And you can't help that. You have no control over what those scales are going to do. What you do have control over is the behaviours, which is why we have to focus on the process and not the outcome. Don't try to cut your dietary fat too low. It'll make your meals unsatisfying. It will make you feel tired. It'll make you feel lethargic. It'll make you feel like shit. Don't do it. It's very tempting because fat is the most energy dense macronutrient for when you're trying to diet. It's like, oh, I'll just cut out cheese and cream and butter and egg yolks and all that stuff. It will make your meals really unsatisfying. For a balanced diet and balanced meals, we need fat as well. Doesn't matter how long it takes. All that it matters is that you started, you're going. Nobody cares if it takes you 2 weeks or 2 years. Like, really, honestly, no one cares. And those little urges to overeat, I think this is a really important one. Little urges to overeat, binge eat, comfort yourself with food might actually never go away. And it's normal that they never go away. I think it's very glorified of like, yeah, cure your binge eating. And actually, those urges don't go away. Like, I still get the urge to eat an entire bar of dairy milk when I'm stressed. You just learn how to manage those urges effectively, and you manage to like rationalize a little voice that's like, you need fruit and nut. And I'm like, I don't need fruit and nut. I need self-compassion and a shower and to stroke the dog. So they might not go away, and that's okay, and that's not normal. You're not a failure for those urges not going away. You just need to learn how to manage them effectively. So yeah, you're not a failure for having the urge to eat or having the urge to manage your emotions with food. It's just a thing. It happens. It's an effective coping mechanism. It's just not a very helpful one. And your situation is your responsibility. And I think that is the most powerful thing. Geez, I've been talking a long time. Sorry. Your situation is your responsibility, and that's powerful. You don't always have control over your situation, but you have a responsibility to respond to it and to respond appropriately to it. You can't always help the fact that someone close to you has died, but you have control over your response to that situation, and you get to choose how you manage that. And I think that's it. So, tiny quick sales spiel. Apologies, anyone else who's self-employed will know that these things are necessary. So the Fat Loss Handbook, 2nd edition, hard copy, is a different type of self-guided coaching group, and I just want to give you a few quick words about it. I promise this will take me like 2 minutes, and then we can do some questions. So most programs will give you calories and macros, this fat loss at all cost mentality, some kind of weekly group call. Yay, well done, stick to those numbers I gave you, try harder, yay, off you go. Why aren't you sticking to the numbers? I told you to stick to the numbers. Okay, we'll bring your calories up by 200. Like, those kind of, that's most fat loss. Like, trust me, I've been there. Like, I've been in those groups, like, have coached like that previously. It's not super helpful. Like, eat less chocolate, like, yay, eat less pudding. To be honest, I tell most of my clients to eat more pudding. And it works. If you want to get your hands on a copy of the Fat Loss Handbook, 2nd edition, a hard copy, updated, new and improved, you can do so on the website. I know that quite a few of you watching do already have a copy. I will stick a link to it in the email that I'm going to send you with this recording. So the Fat Loss Handbook, a lot of people ask me what it is, and I realize that I'm really bad at explaining what it is. It's that thing of working out the lifestyle and letting the weight take care of itself. So it's not particularly, like, it isn't about fat loss. It's about the lifestyle that will help to lead to fat loss. So curating the habits and behaviors, and not just trying to force body weight down like any other like cut might. And you also get lifetime access to the Facebook group. And in there, you can check in with us every week. There is a little check-in thread. You can go post your, like, how's it been? How are you getting on? And you get continuous educational content in the group. I'm continually adding to this. The Facebook group was a little bit dormant for a while, and I've reinvigorated it. So there is so much more stuff going in there now. So in the new year, I'm putting together currently almost more like a self-guided video course, which is linked to the Fat Loss Handbook, which is going to be a huge, extensive fat loss video course. Haven't worked out if and when and how check-in with it is going to work yet, but it's going to be like a self-directed, self-guided course. And everybody who owns the Fat Loss Handbook will have a chance to get their hands on the course of video lectures for a hefty discount. So if you're going to purchase a copy of the Fat Loss Handbook, do so now, and you will be privy to a hefty discount when that video course does come to light at some point early next year. I'm in the process of writing and recording it right now. And then we have the Fat Loss Handbook method. Nearly done, I promise. This is your chance to spend 10 weeks with me. I only have a few slots left for this year, and then it's going to be going into the new year. And this is where you basically check in with me over 10 weeks. There's extra weekly tasks and homework, and it's basically me guiding you through the process. So this is like you having the fat loss handbook and me going, have you thought about that? But have you thought about that? And you going, I'm going to do this, and me being like, don't do that, it's a bad idea. And it's us getting you to the point where you know what works for you. It's about finding the right methods that work for you. So figuring out what actually works for you with the guidance of myself and all the Facebook group stuff too, and all the video course stuff too. It'll be a little bit more expensive than just the video course itself, but has all the accountability and all of the guidance and check-ins of me. We'll drop you an email about all of this. Okay, done. Sales bit done. Q&A time. If you have any questions, please do feel free to either the first edition of your book. Can you send out new info? Yes, so if you have the first edition, please do let me know, and I can send you the... Did I not send you it, Jen? I can send you a PDF copy of the updated stuff. It's not massively different, slightly different formatting. I changed like the binding and stuff, so it's easier to open, it's easier to write, it's easier to read, and some added stoof here and there. What omega-3 subs would you recommend? I use a company called HealthSpan. Yeah, a company called HealthSpan, which has a good one, but honestly, any, like, shop for price, go on Amazon, shop within your budget. And what you're looking for is that 1 to 2 grams of EPA and DHA. Honestly, like the last one I recommended to somebody was just my protein ones. My protein would be absolutely fine. I think they have some super elite mega omega-3 capsules, and they work a dream. If you're really old school and you like hate yourself, you can use cod liver oil, and that works just as well. Yes, I will stick a link to HealthSpan as well. Like, I'll stick a link to a few of my preferred supplements that I recommend to one clients. I'll make a note of that. Preferred supplements. Okay, L-glutamine, a little more about quantities. Yes, I can. Oh God, you've put me on the spot. I sent this to someone the other day. Give me a moment. Did I send it to? I think it here. I think I did. Okay, 5 grams, 1 to 2 per day. I knew it was like 5 something, and I was like, 500 grams? I was like, no, 500 grams is excessive. Yeah, so about 5 grams, 1 to 2 times per day. Take it with a meal, take it with like your morning or your evening meal or something like that. God, I knew I'd written it down. I just started second guessing myself. I didn't want to say like a gram in case it was wrong. And I was like, no, 5 grams is creatine. But yeah, about 5 grams. Like, you know, the little creatine scoops. Some people like mixing it with like milk or something because it tastes a little bit chalky, but just in whatever form you find palatable. Some people are happy just to like mix it in water and just down it. I know a few people who stick it in their protein shake. If you have a protein shake at some point throughout the day, just whack it in there and shake it up with that. Yeah, it has good evidence behind it to suggest it actually works. Like, anecdotally, I've used it with a few clients now, and it really is helpful. And there's a lot of research to it, and a lot of people that I know who use it with their clients as well. Sean's, yay. Choosing not to count calories at the moment makes me focus on the numbers instead of the food. I would massively yeah, I'd massively agree with this. It is very helpful to focus more on the food and focus more on enjoying it. Eating enough to continue on the journey, had a tendency to reduce too much and inevitably binge eating. Yeah, that is a very real thing that happens. And I think a lot of people don't realize this. So one thing is, don't be fat avoidant. If you have a few days where you accidentally eat a little bit too much and you end up at maintenance, like, it's not the end of the world. You can just reduce that a little bit. And one of the difficulties of, you'll have learned this now, of not counting calories is that you don't have that, like, the knowledge that you definitely are in a deficit. So it's easy to undershoot, to be like, well, I know that if I just eat lettuce all day, I'm definitely in a deficit. So don't be fat avoidant. Increase your portion sizes a little bit. If you're going to have something like a salad, like, just stick a bit of salad dressing on it. if you are finding that you are actually like feeling hungry, it's probably a good indication. Like, listen to the signals that your body's having. Your body's having, that your body's giving you. You can be very full in terms of food volume, but still be left somewhat wanting because you potentially haven't had enough energy. So do learn the difference between I am full of fibrous vegetables versus I am full and satisfied. So potentially think about reducing food volume a little bit if you eat a lot of vegetables. But I think just in general, making your meals big enough, making your meals well balanced. Most people can probably have 3 reasonably sized meals per day and still be in a deficit. So I would keep an eye on snacking between meals, keep it to just like fruit and stuff, and have 3 decent sized meals. Like we tonight had steak, wedges, and broccoli, and I think I probably still ended up in a deficit today. But yeah, very easy to do, very easy to undershoot. Don't be scared to put some sauces on stuff, cook in some oil, put some dressings on things, and have a little bit of fun with it. Like, don't feel like you have to stick to just fat loss recipes. Like, have some pasta one night, have a chicken pie, with real puff pastry, have some cheese sauce, have some steak. Yeah, very easy to do. And if you feel like you are getting those urges to binge eat, because I think, well, from my knowledge of the majority of people who do binge eat, like myself included, I've been there, I've done it. After I competed in like 2016, I was a mess with overeating and binge eating. You get these urges and these like, I could just go to Morrison's and I could just get one small piece of chocolate and I shall just eat the small piece of chocolate, and you come home with like half of Morrison's and you're like, I'll just have a bite of each and a taste of each, and you know, like deep in your brain, that what you actually want to do is like eat the entire thing. If you feel those urges coming on, take it as a sign that actually you need a bit more food and just have a meal, like have something substantial then and there if you can, just to tide yourself over and just to kind of bump you out of that mode. My go-to is peanut butter and bovril on toast for that. Don't knock it till you've tried it. It's delicious. You get the like sweet and salty feels going on. Toast, butter, peanut butter, bovril, amazing. I hope that answers the question. But yeah, I feel like if you're feeling a binge coming on and if you can catch yourself before it, just have something substantial. And take that as a sign that actually you need to adjust upwards a little bit again. And it's a game of trial and error. It's a game of like balancing. It's a very delicate balancing equation. And you learn over time what your appropriate portion sizes are, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and roughly what that deficit food looks like. Is that it? I'm aware that I've had an hour of your time. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be sending out the recording to everybody who has registered for the session. If you do come up with any other questions, please do feel free just to slide into my emails or slide into my DMs. I'm always available. Most of the time I'm available. I'm available during office hours, but I will get back to any questions that you slide into the DMs with, or the emails with. Thank you so much. I thought I hadn't hit record then. I was about to cry. I have. It's fine. Thank you so much for joining me. I've enjoyed chatting shit about nutrition. It's honestly the only chat I have. I'm a nightmare at dinner parties because the only thing I can talk about is food. And yeah, I really appreciate you joining me tonight. Thank you for giving me an hour of your time. Oh, Richie managed to stay till the end. It's bedtime. It is bedtime. It's 1 minute past 9. So yeah, if you come up with any other questions, please do just let me know. And I'm going to leave it there and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.